I understand, like, from a business perspective, that doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't think the NFL can really push for that 17-game season. I just think that they wouldn't be able to hold the 18-game season as a negotiating stance when so many of the owners were against it. So they're kind of moving to 17. I don't think it's going to be that serious. I don't think the NFLPA will bite on that. Their push right now is, higher salary percentage and player safety. And if that kind of hurts the player safety side of things. So I don't think it's going to be the case. And then what I personally prefer, I kind of think there should be 2 bye weeks anyway, but an 18 game season with 2 bye weeks would be fun if there were better provisions to kind of protect players who now by the end of the season, the Super Bowl champions will have played like 22 games instead of like 19 or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't think it's a serious proposal that they'll be able to fully advance.
No, and when you had mentioned the things that the NFL is trying to push right now, including player safety, it does just fly in the face of. And but when's the last time that the NFL was truly making decisions that were following their own like directives on that sort of thing? So,
yeah. No, I think it's what the NFLPA will put the kibosh on it, because that's.
Yeah.
They actually care about player safety a little bit.
They're paid to anyway. The NFL, however, is not. Matt Myrick had a question that was more relevant before the Packers lost. It was, who would have thought this could have been a contest to determine the sole possession of last place, talking about the Bears and the Vikings. Have both of these teams taken a significant step back from last year, or have the Packers just improved? Or have the Packers, or is the Packers' run defense just the worst run defense in the league? That was my addition, not Matt's.
Yeah, so assuming that the Packers won, is this a case where both teams have dropped off? And I don't think so, right? Because I think the Vikings have looked good in 11 of 12 quarters. The Bears, I think, were just overrated. We talked about this before the season, that we thought that the Bears were overrated. And now we're sort of seeing the fruits of that. Of course, the reason the Bears are in a position to, quote unquote, be in last place is because they lost to an in-division team, the Packers. So I would say there's nothing to be said here about last place in the NFC North that'll tell us very much, because there have been so many in-division games. The only team with an out-of-division loss right now is the Packers, which is kind of weird because they're the only ones with in-division wins. But yeah, I wouldn't say that either team has shown significant signs of regression. Now, the Bears' offense has tailed off because Trubisky is just not that talented. The defense, we'll see. They were not very good at generating turnovers in the first 2 games, but they were playing a very turnover-averse offense with the Packers. And then obviously in the 3rd game, they played a very turnover-friendly offense with Case Keenum at quarterback and generated 5 turnovers. So they're back to where it feels like they were at the end of last year. So who knows, right? I'll say that I think that their turnover production will continue to not sustain itself, which will lead to a little bit of a drop-off, but that defense still seems to be performing a lot better than we expected. So I'd say that there's not really a significant drop-off among the teams in the NFC North, and the Lions have played a little bit better than we expected to.
They have, but they still also do the whole Lions thing and end up tying the Arizona Cardinals for some reason.
Cardinals? What?
Yeah. Kyle Slaby asks, Arif, would you rather Wentz look awful and the Packers win, or Trubisky looks good, especially passes to the left, and the Vikings lose?
I don't. So that's like a but, right? So Wentz looks awful, but Trubisky looks good, right? Like Kyle, I don't understand your question. My preference is that my takes are correct, and
that the brand is strong.
Right, that the brand remains strong. Trubisky looking awful on passes to the left, I think, is currently more important to my brand than Carson Wentz looking bad. So I'm going to go with Trubisky looking bad, and in that case, I guess the Vikings win, right? And then the Packers lose, and Wentz looks good. Which it looks like I might not have to choose, because I don't think Wentz looked particularly great. Although, like, statistically, like 3 touchdowns, right? So that looks all right. But in the game, he didn't look all that great. So
no, Wentz takes are the old and busted, and the Trubisky takes are the new hotness. So you can just go that route and call it good. I'm just going to age myself with a reference that's almost 20 years old.
That is. Wow.
Yeah. Also, what is more likely? The Vikings gain more yards rushing than passing, or Trubisky by himself rushes for more yards than he passes?
That's really funny. I don't think the Vikings will get more rushing yards than passing yards again. So, but I do think it is very possible, especially with the way Mike Zimmer talked about Trubisky. I do think it's very possible that that Trubisky ends up with more rushing yards than passing, and that could be like a double-edged sword, right? Because he could go off for like 140 on the ground and then 130 in the air, and that'll be enough. Very like Josh Allen versus the Vikings type stat line. That is pretty unlikely, though. Yeah, let's go with the first one's more likely, even though it just feels like the second one has it. The first one's more likely.
Raul asks, coin toss question, what is the evidence for deferring possession until the second half? Does this strategy work against the Vikings' strengths? The Vikings give up points early and adjust well as the game goes on. Early deficits limit a run-first philosophy on defense.
So I'll say that the evidence exists, but is extremely scant, that the double possession is an actual advantage. It's a very theoretical advantage, but you can't guarantee the double possession, right? Because they could just have the ball at the end and run out the clock, and now you don't get the double possession. Whereas you can guarantee the first possession. So the double possession really only exists because they have the first possession. So you're always catching up to their possession until the very end. And so having the double possession just means you've caught up. So I actually don't like it. I understand why it exists. It's intuitively comforting to have the ability to double dip. But if you're a drive behind, you may just need to double dip to catch up. So I don't think it's that much of an advantage. And I'll also say I don't think playing ahead is as much of an advantage for the Vikings as it seems to be, because I don't think the Vikings go up 7-0 and then automatically just start running the ball a lot. I think that they see that as a standard down situation where, 7 points isn't enough to start changing your strategy. And the Vikings are more likely to change their strategy to run the ball in a lot of situations than other teams, but I just don't think 7 points is enough to do that early in the game. So I'll say I do think that for the Vikings, as it's constructed, it is suboptimal, but it's so small a disadvantage or advantage that it's not worth picking too many nits about. I do think that your intuition is correct, that it's probably better for the Vikings to receive, to give them more opportunities to score first than it is to double dip, because double dipping only gets you back to even. But I just don't think that the advantage is so significant, because by the end of the game, it's usually 13-14 or 14-14 in terms of total number of drives. And so, your ability to generate a 3-and-out on a particular drive is going to be massively more important than whether or not you defer, which is why it's a coin flip, right? Because it's just not that significant. It's not like, apparently in cricket, the coin flip is like huge, but football, it's not that big.
And cricket games, depending on what the game is, can last 2 weeks. So
right, yeah,
that's a whole other gigantic problem. Joe Justice asks, in honor of this week's news, what can I make with peaches and mint? I was thinking ice cream or Moscow mules. Any suggestions?
Man, if only Dusty was available for this episode.
I know. You
have some suggestions.
I do, actually. I grill fruit every once in a while and confuse the kids. And
grilled fruit is great. By the way.
It is. Grilled fruit is awesome, and it's worth it to take a look at their face and be like, "This is really." It does turn into the Simpsons thing with the flaming Homer of, "I don't know what it was, but fire made it good." So what I would suggest doing is something I've actually done, is taking 3/4 a cup of sugar and 3/4 of a cup of fresh mint leaves. You can use the already picked stuff, but fresh mint leaves, and put that into a food processor or blender or something, and just chop it up nice and fine. And then you take 6 peaches and you put a little bit of like a neutral oil, like an extra virgin olive oil or just something light on it, just to coat it, and make sure to coat your grill also with a little bit of nonstick, because peaches are going to try to stick. And before you put the peaches on, go ahead and put the you don't. You just put the peaches on by themselves, and then after you take them off, you can put the sugar and mint on there. And if you really want to be crazy, you can put a little bit of cinnamon on there as well. And the cinnamon ends up just popping it really well. So I would suggest doing that, and you can actually do that on the ice cream itself. So if you wanted
we'll share some recipes in the show notes. I'm kind of preferable to do basically what you suggested. And put it on top of ice cream, but instead of just putting the mint directly on top of ice cream. So still grill the peaches, put that on vanilla ice cream, leave the mint inside some bourbon, and then pour a little bit of that into a bowl with some brown sugar and heat that up, and reduce it, and then pour that on top of the ice cream.
Really, just make a simple syrup and then set up an IV and then just slowly let that seep directly into your veins. Dusty would appreciate that answer. Don from Ohio asks, between Arif, Dusty, and James, which one would be the whistleblower of the other two if they were stealing company funds?
Well, Dusty has the most capability to steal company funds.
Not necessarily. Well, I'm the one in charge of everything, so like.
Well, whose account who has the PayPal? It's like in Dusty's name, right?
It has Dusty's name on it, which is still which was annoying when Dusty wasn't on the show. I'm trying to give money to the show, but it keeps saying Dusty. Is it still going to you guys? Yes.
We had that question.
It's a gigantic pain to change the name on a PayPal account, as it turns out, knowing that firsthand. So, no, it's handled by me. So,
I'm glad you've admitted to being in the best position to embezzle money in case that happens. So, yeah, I guess I'm the whistleblower.
I think Dusty's got his name on everything. I don't have my name on it, so it's not like...
Dusty's the fall guy. Yeah. You're the embezzler. Right. I'm the whistleblower.
I'm the one who
can't wait for my side-eye feature in the New York Times.
Side note.
Somebody who writes for The Athletic popped open the operation. It's like, who could you be talking about?
Yeah, you'll have your top half of the newspaper all set and ready to go, like Ted Glover's grandkids today. Fantastic. All right, well, that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. We will be back next week to talk about, hopefully, the victory over the Chicago Bears. So look forward to that. Again, if you donate to the show in the amount of tree fitty or more for via Patreon, you will be receiving swag from us. So go ahead and do that if you hear value in what we produce. Also, we will be doing the live show on November 29th at Pedosky's in Seattle, Washington. So, Arif, what do you have to plug?
All right, so I've already got a piece up at The Athletic about, takeaways from the Vikings-Raiders game, which I plugged in the last show. That's still up there. By the time this goes live, for most of you, unless you just get it automatically the night of, I'll probably have a piece up at The Athletic about how to attack that Bears defense if indeed there's, weaknesses to be exploited. So check that out.
All right, that is going to be it for this episode. So for Arif, for Dusty, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening, and please remember that revenge is a dish served best. I'm just going to mess that up too. I'm not even going to cut that. We're just going to keep going. Revenge is a dish best served funky as hell. And we will see you next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and co-host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can also be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much